An incredible sight in Vaughan this afternoon as a Muslim spiritual leader arrived to begin a one-month national tour.
Thousands of GTA Muslims are excited about one of the most high-profile visits by a Muslim leader to Canada.
तुझको खुदा ने साया रहमत बना दिया मसरूर तुझ पे साया रहमत खुदा करे मसरूर तुझ पे साया रहमत खुदा करे रहमत खुदा करे.
Gathering of thousands in the quiet Vaughan neighborhood known to the local Ahmadiyya Muslim community as Peace Village. Mark Carcassol, Global News.
तुझको खुदा ने साया रहमत बना दिया मसरूर तुझ पे साया रहमत खुदा करे मसरूर तुझ पे साया रहमत खुदा करे रहमत खुदा करे.
Coincides with the religion's 50th anniversary here in Canada.
Of their spiritual leader. As you can see, there are still thousands of people on the street and in the area hoping to catch a glimpse of their spiritual leader.
No matter which country, no matter which continent, the pull towards the Khalifa is magnetic. Wherever he goes, crowds of people flock towards Huzur. Like birds we flock to the beacon of Khilafat. These scenes are possibly most unique to Canada than they are anywhere else, with Peace Village having been developed right next to Beit al-Islam Mosque. A large neighborhood of approximately 260 homes, Peace Village was developed in 1999 and is home to a large number of families that belong to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Join us in this special series for the incredible journey of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V, may Allah be his helper, in Canada, and let us bring you closer to this North American country. It is late in the afternoon and already people have started lining the streets. Students from Jamia Ahmadiyya Canada wait across the street from where Huzur will be residing, practicing slogans and poems for Hazrat Amirul Momineen's arrival. As the arrival of Hazrat Amirul Momineen, may Allah be his helper, is imminent, hundreds turn into thousands, creating a sea of well-wishers. As the time draws nearer to Huzur's arrival, several media outlets can be seen. Helicopters circle overhead, their vans park nearby, while camera crews record the remarkable scene. Finally, the moment arrives. Sirens are heard as the police motorcade enters Peace Village. Along with it is Hazrat Amirul Momineen, may Allah be his helper, and the Qafla. The crowd erupts shouting slogans of Allahu Akbar and reciting poems. The atmosphere surrounding Huzur is electric. Members of the Jamaat try their best to catch a glimpse of him, waving and expressing their love for the Khalifa through Nare. Upon arrival at his residence in Peace Village, Huzur was welcomed by the Mayor of Vaughan, Honorable Maurizio Bevilacqua, Ontario's Minister of Transportation, Honorable Stephen Del Duca, and National Member of Parliament, Honorable Deborah Schultz. Shortly after, His Holiness led the Zohar and Asr prayers at the Beit al-Islam Mosque. As night fell over the Canadian city, lights twinkled around Peace Village. Members of the community have been working tirelessly in preparation for this visit. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, may Allah be his helper, surprised them by taking a long walk through the crowds before heading to Bayt al-Islam Mosque to lead prayers. It was on October 5th, 2016 that Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmed, may Allah be his helper, was interviewed by Global News.
To better understand what's happening in the Middle East and the growing threat of radical extremism, then it's time to dispel a few myths. Myths like Islam being a monolithic religion. This month, the spiritual leader of millions of Muslims is visiting the GTA. The sect he represents is small in terms of Islam, but extremely active in outreach and full of missionary zeal, something that doesn't always go over well with fellow Muslims. Here's my conversation with the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Welcome back to Canada.
Thank you.
What is your message in this visit to Canada, and what is it that you would like to hear from Prime Minister Trudeau when you meet him?
The message, nowadays the prevailing situation in the world is very critical because of disturbance in the Middle East, and as a result of that, the whole world is involved in it.
Is caution the same thing as inaction? You say to be cautious.
Yes.
Does that mean that Canada should not play?
She should play.
What role should our government play?
You see, they have to see that what is the right way, how to deal with it in a way that does not disturb either the local people, if it is a case of immigrants, or refugees. So if proper justice is done, so all the parties should be given their due right.
Thursday, October 6th, 2016, one day before the start of the 40th annual Jalsa Salana Canada, the Ontario legislature unanimously passed an act that declared October would now be recognized as Islamic Heritage Month. It began as an NDP private member's bill, and party leader Andrea Horwath hoped that it would be an opportunity to celebrate and learn about the history of Islamic culture. It also coincided with Hazur's trip to Canada. Throughout the day, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V, may Allah be his helper, met with families and individuals who had come from far and wide to pray behind their beloved Imam and perchance to meet him. Later on in the evening, Hazrat Amirul Momineen, may Allah be his helper, attended the inspection of Jalsa volunteers. Each year, thousands of volunteers give up their time to make sure that the annual Jalsa Salana runs smoothly and without any hiccups. Duties vary from registration, translation, and ziyafat to security, discipline, and cleanliness.
आलू डालते हैं कितना गोश्त डालते हैं
40 गोश्त और 25
कितना गोश्त है कितना
40 पाउंड 15 पाउंड
लगता है कि अफसर पैसों का ज़्यादा शुक्र नहीं है क्योंकि 25,000 इतना आ गया था।
During his address at the Bayt al-Islam Mosque in Peace Village, His Holiness reminded the 5,100 volunteers that it was their duty to display the highest morale standards and etiquettes.
जलसे में आपने हर एक से जहाँ भी आपकी ड्यूटी है پہلی بات جس کو سامنے رکھنا ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ خوش اخلاقی کا مظاہرہ کرتے ہوئے اچھے طریقے سے ملنا ہے.
His Holiness said that each worker should remember that his or her service was offered voluntarily and ought to be conducted with humility and a spirit of selflessness.
جلسے کے لیے آپ سب کو یہ بات یاد رکھنی چاہیے کہ جس کی خدمت کے لیے اپنے آپ کو آپ نے پیش کیا کوئی اس میں زبردستی نہیں تھی، بلکہ ایک شوق سے آپ نے اپنے آپ کو پیش کیا اس لیے کہ حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کے مہمانوں کی خدمت کر سکیں. انسان کے اپنے گھر میں مہمان آتا ہے تو اس کے لیے وہ جو بھی اسے بن پڑتا ہے کرتا ہے. تو ایک ایسی ہستی جو ہم سب کو بہت پیاری ہے، جس نے خاص طور پر جماعت کو یہ توجہ بھی دلائی کہ تم مہمانوں کی خدمت کرو، ان مہمانوں کی جو دین کی خاطر سفر کر کے آنے والے ہیں، تو ان کی خدمت کس جوش اور جذبے سے کارکنان کو کرنی چاہیے، اس کا آپ خود اندازہ کریں. جہاں تک انتظامی معاملات کا سوال ہے، میرے خیال میں گو کہ میں کافی سالوں بعد آیا ہوں جلسے پہ، کینیڈا کی جماعت کے کارکنان جو جلسے پر خدمت کرنے والے ہیں اس حد تک اپنے اپنے کام میں ماہر ہو چکے ہیں کہ وہ ہر کام کو باریکی سے سمجھ کر کرنے والے ہوں گے. مجھے یہ امید ہے انشاءاللہ.
The 40th annual Jalsa Salana Canada commenced with the flag hoisting ceremony attended by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V. May Allah be his helper.
دی ہے کامرانی فسبحان الذی اوفى الامانی فسبحان الذی اوفى الامانی. ہماری رات بھی ہے نور افشاں، ہماری صبح خوش ہے شام مسرور، شام مسرور. خدا نے ہم کو دی ہے کامرانی فسبحان الذی اوفى الامانی فسبحان الذی اوفى الامانی.
Thousands had gathered to listen to the beloved Khalifa. Hazur addressed the gathering and advised the Jamaat about celebrating their 50th anniversary during his Friday sermon.
جماعت یہ سال اپنے جماعت اس ملک میں جماعت کے قیام کے 50 سال منا رہی ہے. اور اسی وجہ سے امیر صاحب نے خاص طور پر زور دے کر مجھے بھی بلایا کہ جماعت کینیڈا اس سال 50 سال کے حوالے سے مختلف فنکشنز بھی کر رہی ہے، اور یہ جلسہ بھی اس لحاظ سے امید ہے کہ بڑا ہوگا، اس لیے آئیں. جیسا کہ میں نے کہا کہ جب خلیفہ وقت کی موجودگی ہو تو لوگ بھی زیادہ آتے ہیں. اس سال اس وجہ سے میرے آنے کی وجہ سے بیرونی ممالک سے بھی کافی لوگ آئے ہوں گے اور آ رہے ہوں گے. بہرحال اس سال کو آپ لوگ یہاں کے رہنے والے احمدی خاص اہمیت دے رہے ہیں. لیکن ہر احمدی کو یاد رکھنا چاہیے کہ اس کی اہمیت تو تبھی ہوگی جب ہر احمدی جو کینیڈا میں رہتا ہے इस बात की कोशिश करे कि हमने अहमदी होने के बाद जो अहद बैत हज़रत मसीह अलैहिस्सलाम से बांधा है उसे हमने पूरा करना है। जो तवक्कुआत आप अलैहिस्सलाम ने हमसे रखी हैं उन पर पूरा उतरना है, वरना 50 साल हों या इससे ज़्यादा साल हों, इससे क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है।
Later on in the day, Hazrat Amirul Momineen later held a press conference with the representatives of the Canadian print, broadcast, and ethnic media.
CTV's Naomi Parnas is in Mississauga, where 25,000 Muslims from across the GTA gathered this afternoon to hear a message of hope. Naomi.
That's right, Michelle. It was a very special day here for thousands of people. Today is actually the first day of a 3-day Muslim convention here in Mississauga, but it started off with a sermon from the worldwide spiritual leader of the Ahmadiyya community. A historic day for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Canada, as over 25,000 people had the honor of hearing from their religion's spiritual leader. Caliph Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, who is like the Pope to the Ahmadiyya community, is in Canada for 6 weeks. Today, he addressed the largest Muslim convention in the country. Posters lined the walls saying love for all, hatred for none. It's the message this leader and these people hope to spread. They want the world to know Ahmadiyya Muslims and true Islam is about peace.
I know the Ahmadi Jamaat lives by the motto, the words, love for all, hatred for none. How important is it to really spread that message in today's society?
I think it is quite obvious for everybody that how important this is to today's, situation where there are so many atrocities, brutalities are being committed by Muslim groups, although they do not represent the Muslim Ummah. This is a small majority, small minority, small group. It is said their membership is only up to 30,000. And some other groups also having some few thousand members as compared to the total population of Muslim Ummah. This is just a small number. But the nation's value of these people is too much. They can create havoc anywhere they like by suicide bombing and other, brutal actions. So in this age, the message, love for all and hatred for none, is the message to be spread all across the world.
I was reading in your bio that you can't practice Ahmadiyya Muslim in Pakistan, which is hard to believe here in Canada. We're a very diverse, multicultural country. How do you feel when you come to Canada? What do you think of Canada? And
see, since I was elected to this office, I am not living in Pakistan, but in the UK, in London. So there also there's freedom of religion. What we believe, we practice. I'm happy that Canada is multicultural and multi-ethnic country, and here you have the freedom of religion and freedom of speech and freedom of whatever you like.
do you like coming to Canada? Do you enjoy your visit?
Yes, I enjoy. I do enjoy whenever I come.
Today's program is an historic moment. His Holiness' visit coincides with the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat's 50th anniversary in Canada. His Holiness advocates peace and justice in the world through the true and peaceful teachings of Islam. He advocates for interfaith dialogue and cross-community cohesion. He has spoken at Capitol Hill, the UK Parliament, and to other parliaments around the world, expressing that the solution to the world's current predicaments is entrenched in the application of absolute justice and being dutiful to God and to fellow beings. His Holiness firsthand understands the issues of persecution and the absence of freedom of religion, as he himself has experienced persecution for his beliefs. Though we Ahmadis are persecuted in some countries around the world, His Holiness continues to advocate and practice the true and peaceful teachings of Islam. During His Holiness's address to the Dutch Parliament, he said, "We are the people who desire peace in the world. We are the people who seek to heal the world. We are the people who seek to unite mankind. We are the people who seek to transform all hatreds and enmities into love and affection. And most certainly, we are the people who make every possible effort towards establishing world peace. It is with extreme humility and honor that Allah has given me the opportunity to introduce to you Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmed, Khalifatul Masih V and worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat." Hazur.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the gracious, ever merciful. All the distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace and blessing of Allah be upon you all. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for inviting me, especially our close friend Judy Sago. And I am neither a political person and nor am I the leader of a political organization. Rather, I am the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which is a purely religious and spiritual community. Nonetheless, irrespective of differences of background, I believe that on the basis of humanity, we are all joined together and should therefore be united. All people and all organizations must collectively endeavor to uphold human values and strive to make the world in which we live a better and far more harmonious place. Consequently, if human values and human rights are not upheld in one country or region, it has a knock-on effect upon other parts of the world, and such wrongdoing can spread further afield. Conversely, if there is goodness, humanity, and prosperity in one part of the world, it will have a positive effect on other societies and other people. As a result of modern forms of communication and transport, we are all now much closer together and are no longer confined or bound by geography. Yet it is a strange and tragic paradox that even though we are more connected than ever before, we are actually growing more distant by the day. It is extremely regrettable and a source of grief that instead of uniting and spreading love amongst mankind, the world has paid far greater heed towards spreading hatred, cruelty, and injustice. People are unwilling to take personal responsibility for their failures, and so each individual blames others and considers the division and conflicts of the world to be the fault of everyone else but them. Consequently, we are passing through a time of great uncertainty, and no one can truly comprehend what the consequences of our actions will be, both in the short term and in the long term. In this age, when the fear of Islam is on the increase in much of the world, let me reassure all of you that Islam is not what you commonly see or hear portrayed in the media. As far as my knowledge of Islam is concerned, I only know of that Islam whose teachings are based on its name. The literal meaning of the word Islam is peace, love, and harmony. And all of its teachings are based upon these noble values. However, unfortunately, it cannot be denied that there are some Muslim groups whose beliefs and actions are in total contrast to this, in complete violation of Islam's fundamental teachings. They are perpetrating the most horrific violence and terrorism in its name. In light of all this, I shall now seek to share with you Islam's true and peaceful teachings. This esteemed venue, where you have courageously invited me, is not a house of religion, and probably there are many amongst you who are not personally interested in religion. However, in your capacities as lawmakers, you will sometimes have to deal with matters that affect the followers of religion. In this context, the Holy Quran categorically states in chapter 2, verse 257, that there should be no compulsion in religion. What a clear, comprehensive, and unequivocal statement that enshrines freedom of thought, freedom of religion, and freedom of conscience. Thus, my belief and my teaching is that every person in every village, town, city, or country has the undisputed right to choose his or her religion and to practice it. Furthermore, every individual has the right to peacefully preach and propagate his or her teaching to others. These freedoms ought to be guaranteed as basic human rights, and so legislative assemblies or governments should not unduly involve themselves in such matters. Otherwise, there is a risk that their intrusion could be viewed as a source of provocation and lead to frustration and resentment. Sadly, in today's world, we are seeing how Muslim governments are themselves interfering in such personal matters, and this is a root cause of the instability and conflicts in those countries. The only beneficiaries are extremist religious clerics and militants who are taking advantage of the frustrations of people by promoting barbaric violence and senseless conflict. However, it cannot be said that Western governments who claim to be truly democratic are entirely innocent or blameless. Rather, in the West, we also see that sometimes laws are or rules are enacted that are in conflict with Western claims of being beacons of universal religious freedom and tolerance. Laws are occasionally created that contradict the view that every person in the Western world is free to believe whatever he or she desires and to have the liberty to live peacefully according to his or her faith. It is not wise for governments or parliaments to place restrictions on the basic religious practices or beliefs of people. For example, governments should not concern themselves with what type of clothing a woman chooses to wear. They should not issue decrees stating what a place of worship should look like. If they overreach in this way, it will be a means of restlessness and heightening frustrations amongst their people. Such grievances will continue to exacerbate if they are not checked and ultimately will threaten the peace of society. Of course, I am not advocating that people with extremist views should be tolerated or free to pursue their beliefs. Wherever and whenever someone uses his religion to justify cruelty and injustice, or to usurp the rights of others, or to act against the state, or in a way that affects the security of the nation, it is certainly the responsibility of the government and authorities to firmly stop such evil practices. In such circumstances, it is entirely justified and proper for the government, parliamentarians, and other relevant authorities to ensure that such people are rooted out and punished in accordance with the law of the land. Nonetheless, in my view, what is wrong is for the state to needlessly interfere with peacefully held religious beliefs and practices. The Islam that we know and practice teaches that the love of your country is an essential part of your faith as a Muslim. According to Islam, a person's country is the one in which he lives and from which he derives benefit. And when such a teaching is ingrained in a Muslim's heart and mind, it is impossible for him to think ill or to desire any harm to his country. Furthermore, Islam teaches that not only should the law of the land punish anyone who acts against his country, but also that such people will surely enter the court of God Almighty and be held accountable by Him for their misdeeds and disloyalty. Hence, there is no need to fear a true Muslim, and there is no need for the government to enact laws that infringe upon relatively small religious issues or practices, which neither cause harm or danger to the members of the public or to the state. To legislate on such matters can only be described as an unnecessary interference and an invasion of those freedoms that the West claims to champion. That is the right of each person to live with liberty and personal autonomy. Undoubtedly, such unjust interventions cannot have any positive effect that can only lead to frustration, restlessness, and discord. It is the task of the government and the parliamentarians as guardians of their nations to legislate in a way that gives rights to their citizens rather than take their rights away. This should be done across the board, indiscriminately, so that the rights of all people, whether they be Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, or the people of any other belief, including those who are not religious, are upheld and guaranteed at all times. As I have already said, it is a cause of deep sorrow that in both the Muslim world and also among some developed non-Muslim countries, certain policies have been made that undermine these core freedoms, which have in turn caused grievances amongst segments of the public. Therefore, rather than seeking superficial plaudits, they should look at the bigger picture of how they can bring peace to their nations and ensure that their country and the wider world becomes united and increasingly prosperous. Yet, unfortunately, instead of taking a long-term view, it seems that most leaders or governments have joined an unhealthy race for power and a battle to assert their dominance over others. Consequently, they are increasingly willing to interfere in the personal and religious matters of their citizens due to this thirst of supremacy and control. Such policies are unwise and an unnecessary means of further destabilizing the world, especially given that we are already facing so many different problems and issues that threaten the peace of the society. For example, it is said that the climate change is a huge threat to our civilization. Another burning issue is the economic uncertainty facing the world. Further and more generally, there is the issue of an increasing lack of peace and security in much of the world. All of these issues are a result of unjust policies, inequality, and a lack of balance. If we take the issue of climate change, we see that a major cause of global warming has been the Industrial Revolution in the West and the fact that forests and flora were excessively cut down. Only now such countries have fully developed are they happy to call for a reduction in the carbon emission or other industrial restrictions. However, such regulation may slow down and curb the advancement and growth of emerging powers such as India and China. And so, these rising nations may well view such restrictions as hypocritical, unfair, and an attempt by the historically dominant powers to stop them from progressing and from challenging the global order. Thus, the issue of climate change is actually not only an environmental issue, but is also contributing to the world's lack of peace and increasing resentment between nations. Similarly, in terms of the global financial crisis, many experts admit that governments have long made unwise policies and that today's fiscal uncertainty has now reached a level where it threatens the peace of the world. There are also many other factors that are contributing to the world's lack of peace, and regrettably, many are linked to self-serving and unjust policies that have been implemented by certain countries. Anyway, the ultimate result of the various risks and global threats is that the world is rapidly moving towards an unthinkable catastrophe. Due to the current instability, both the world's governments and the members of the public are becoming increasingly anxious and concerned. There are so many troubling issues, the world no longer knows which to prioritize. Should they focus first on the global warming and climate change? Or should they address the financial crisis? Or should they prioritize the fight against terrorism, warfare, and extremism? Or should they focus on the latest development in Syria, where Russia and the United States are openly opposing one another? Or the most recent is the direct conflict between USA and Yemen. Personally, it is my view that the most critical and pressing issue facing us is the lack of peace in the world. And it is a case of huge regret that the Muslim countries are the center of such instability and disorder, even though their religion has given them unparalleled teachings of how to establish and maintain peace. For example, in chapter 23, verse 9 of the Holy Quran, it is stated that the true Muslim is a person who fulfills any covenant or promises with which they have been entrusted. To be handed the keys to the government is a huge trust, and so we often see heads of state pledge to serve their nations faithfully and with absolute justice. Sadly, in many cases, such honorable pledge prove to be hollow words that are not acted upon. Whereas, if this Quranic teaching was followed, we would never see division or conflict between the public and their governments. Furthermore, in chapter 5, verse 9, the Holy Quran states that even if a person or nation has enmity with another, they should still treat them in an entirely fair and just manner, no matter the circumstances, because that is what Allah the Almighty desires. Yet today, rather than justice, we witness injustice at every level of society, both between people and nations. Such inequality and disregard for fairness is directly contributing to the world's lack of security. In chapter 49, verse 9 of the Holy Quran, it states that if two parties or nations are in a state of conflict, then their neighbors and allies should seek to bring about reconciliation. If peace cannot be established through dialogue, then other nations should unite against whosoever is perpetrating injustice and use force to stop them. Once the aggressors adopt peace, they should not be humiliated, and nor should unfair sanctions be levied upon them. Rather, in the interest of fairness and long-term peace, they should be permitted to move forward as a free society. If we assess the current conflict in the Muslim world, it is clear that this principle of uniting against those who seek to undermine peace has not been observed. If the neighbor countries had sought to mediate impartially and put aside their own interests, the situation could have been contained long ago. However, it is not only the fault of the Muslim world, but other countries living in this global village of ours have also contributed to the disorder. If the major powers had acted equitably and sincerely at all times, we would not have seen such discord, and we would not have seen the emergence of Daesh or extremist rebel groups in countries like Syria and Iran. Regrettably, some major powers have not played their role in peace and have instead enacted unjust policies in order to serve their own interests. For example, certain Western countries have always had an interest in the oil reserves of the Arab world, and this interest has motivated their policies over a long period of time. Further, they have sold huge stocks of weapons to Muslim countries without considering the potential consequences. What I am saying is nothing new or concealed. Rather, it is well documented. For example, a report by Amnesty International published in December 2015 states that decades of reckless arms trading had contributed to the terrorism conducted by Daesh. It stated that the majority of the weapons being used by Daesh were originally produced in the United States and Russia. Furthermore, Patrick Wilkins, a researcher on arms control at Amnesty, concluded the report by stating the vast and varied weaponry being used by ISIS is a textbook case of how reckless arms trading fuels atrocities on a massive scale. Certainly, it is well known that Muslim countries do not have sophisticated arms factories that could produce the state-of-the-art weapons used in the Middle East. And so, the vast majority of artillery being used in the Muslim world is being imported from abroad. If the major powers cease to trade arms and ensure that the other supply lines of the warring governments, rebels, and terrorists were cut, such conflicts could be brought to a swift conclusion. For example, it is well known that Saudi Arabia is using weapons purchased from the West in its war in Yemen, in which thousands of innocent civilians, including women and children, are being killed. And so much destruction is being wrought. What will be the ultimate result of such arms trading? The people of Yemen, whose lives and futures are being destroyed, will not only bear hatred and seek revenge from Saudi Arabia, but will also bear hate towards Saudi's arms suppliers and the West in general. With no hope or future prospects left, and having witnessed the most horrific brutality, members of their youth will be prone to radicalization. And in this way, a new vicious cycle of terrorism and extremism will arise. Are such destructive and devastating consequences worth a few $1 billion? Thus, there is no longer only a risk to the Muslim countries who are at the epicenter of today's conflicts. Rather, the threat has spread much further afield, as we have already witnessed with the recent terrorist attacks in Paris, Brussels, and the United States. There have also been lower level terrorist incidents here in Canada over the past couple of years, of which you will all be well aware. Furthermore, despite the fact that Canada lies thousands of miles away from the Arab world, still we find that Muslim youths have traveled from this country to join extremist groups in Syria and Iraq. Of great concern is the fact that, according to the Canadian government's own statistics, 20% of those who have gone to Syria or Iraq have been women, and this means they will not only have been radicalized themselves, but will also be indoctrinating and brainwashing their children. In order to tackle radicalization and extremism, we must also assess what are its causes and symptoms. Regrettably, most radicalized Muslims who are living in the West have no knowledge or even a basic understanding of Islam's teachings. Thus, their radicalization is a result of their personal frustration and not due to any ideological convictions or beliefs. Apart from online radicalization or hate preaching in mosques or the spread of extremist literature, I believe that a major cause of the radicalization of Muslim youths living in the West has been the economic crisis, and many published reports corroborate this. There are many young Muslims who have gained qualifications, but in spite of their education have not attained suitable employment and so have become marginalized and frustrated. Due to economic difficulties, they are vulnerable and easy prey for extremist clerics and terrorist recruiters. Hence, if young people are given fair opportunities to better themselves and to enter the workforce, it will be a means of keeping one's country safe and secure. At a global level, if only the major powers and the international institutions, such as the United Nations, had truly acted upon their founding principles under all circumstances, then we would not have seen the toxic plague of terrorism infect so many parts of the world. We would not have seen the world's peace and security repeatedly undermined and destroyed. And we certainly would not have witnessed the huge refugee crisis which now confounds and frightens the people of Europe and other developed countries. Hundreds of thousands of innocent people have fled to Europe. Thousands have also come here to Canada in order to seek refuge from the terrorists who have poisoned their own nations. Though most of the refugees will be the genuine and decent people, just one or two negative incidents, as we have seen in the past year, are enough to cause panic, as we are starting to see in Europe and also to some extent here in North America. Hence, we are seeing with our own eyes just how uncertain the world is becoming and how hatred and anxiety has consumed and engulfed much of the world. I repeat that the most root cause remains injustice and inequality. Ultimately, a lack of fairness is also what precipitated the global financial crash and the growing disparity between the rich and the poor during the past few years. I say this given that whilst developed and richer nations may have chosen to invest in poorer countries, they have prioritized their own vested interest above facilitating the development of those local countries. Rather than exploitation and greed, the developed nations ought to have championed the rights of the weaker nations and sought their advancement. They ought to have sincerely helped the people of those poor nations stand upon their own 2 feet with dignity and honor. Yet, most regrettably, this has simply not happened. In chapter 20, verse 132 of the Holy Quran, it instructs that no one should cast covetous eyes upon the wealth or resources of others. If the entire world agreed upon this one principle, then the world's financial system would be fair and just. Capital would be distributed equitably, and nations would reap the rewards of their God-given wealth. We would see that the world's trading would be underpinned by a desire to fulfill the human rights of others, rather than to greedily acquire power and wealth and to fulfill personal interest at all costs. Another example of the world's injustice is reflected in the world's politics. In some countries, there are dictatorships or unjust governments, yet the major powers turn a blind eye to their cruelties because those governments happen to support them and facilitate the procurement of their interests. Yet, in countries where the leaders or governments do not bend to the whim of the major powers, they are quite happy to support rebel elements or to even demand regime change. In truth, there is no difference in the way the respective governments are treating their own people. The material difference is only that in some cases the governments cooperate with the major powers, whilst in others they do not. In terms of the latter category, Western military policies have been devised to remove those governments, as in Iraq and Libya, and similarly such attempts have been made in Syria over the past few years. Time has proved Canada's decision not to take part in the Iraq war as the right one. And I also agree with your government's decision to halt its airstrikes in Syria until the circumstances of that particular conflict and the means to resolve it become much clearer. At a broader level, the United Nations must also play its role in establishing peace in the world, unencumbered by politics, injustice, or favoritism. I hope and pray that Allah the Almighty enables the United Nations and the world's governments to act in this way so that true and long-lasting peace may be established. The alternative does not bear thinking about, because if we continue as we are, then the world is charging madly towards a huge catastrophe in the shape of another world war. May Allah grant wisdom to the world's leaders and policymakers so that the world we leave behind for our children and future generation is a world of peace and prosperity, and not the crippled economy and malformed children. I mean, at the end, I would like to once again thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please be seated.
Our chair of the Ahmadiyya Friendship Association, Honorable Judy Sagro, would like to make a presentation.
Assalamu alaikum. Your Holiness, President Malik, Madam Arbor, ministers, members of Parliament, and all the friends of the Ahmadiyya community that are part of our friendship group. Your Holiness, we've truly been honored by your presence here on Parliament today. I think you brought a level of excitement in many ways, and we very much enjoyed spending some time together today. But as you know, Canada has a long history of sharing its values of freedom and democracy abroad. This is in the same vein as your faith's commitment to love for all, hatred for none. So with that in mind, trying to find a small gift for you to say thank you for your coming to visit us. Thank you for your very important message and for your guidance to all of us as parliamentarians. I'm pleased to be able to present to you, signed by our Prime Minister, a framed copy of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that I know you will very much cherish. So I would like to present that to you on behalf of our Parliamentary Friendship Group.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the message.
Thank you.
As is customary with the conclusions of our program, we would like to end before dinner with a silent prayer. Hazur, if I may request you to please lead us in a silent prayer.
The silent prayer. I mean,